All right, if you want to fuse two pieces of metal together, so for demo today, I'm going to be attaching this piece of copper onto this brass backplate. This is referred to as sweat soldering or applique. And before I started, you're going to want to make sure that both pieces are clean, that they're sanded, and that they're flat. So I sanded these two pieces of metal, I put them in the pickle, and I haven't been handling them too much with my hands. I also washed my hands before I sat down to do this. You want your metal to be flush, so there shouldn't be any gaps in between these. Solder does not fill in spaces, so it's not going to fill in any gaps. It's just going to run through it. So you want to think about solder as water, because again, it's not going to stick it together like a piece of tape or glue or anything like that. If you want to, let's say we want to use this piece to put onto a ring shank later, you're going to use maybe medium or hard solder. So you have to consider your soldering schedule. If you're doing multiple operations, soldering operations, you're going to want to either start with hard or medium, depending on how many steps there are to the process. For this, I'm just going to use medium, just so that I can have the option to put this on a ring shank later on. All right, so first thing I'm going to do is flip my top piece over. I'm going to use some flux for this. I'm going to use some flux on the back plate as well. Remember that solder is going to flow towards heat as well as towards the flux. All right. So what we're going to do is place a couple of pallions of solder. Now this medium solder was actually cut off of sheets, so that's why it's flat. The other pallions, the easy and the hard, are round. But this medium solder just came in a sheet. All right, so I'm going to place a little pallion right there. I'm going to place... Come on, little pallion. You gotta get there. Okay, I'm gonna place another one right here, and I'm gonna place a teeny tiny one over here. Now this pallion isn't teeny tiny, but I'm gonna cut one in half. I'm gonna grab my tweezers. And I'm just gonna use my snips just to make a tinier piece. Okay, hope I don't lose those. All right, now I'm going to place that teeny tiny solder onto this part of this flower. Woo. All right, now I'm going to start the process of sweating this. All right, so once you apply heat to this, those little pallions are going to jump around. So I'm going to want my soldering pick. This is my soldering pick for medium. Everything's color coded. And I'm going to move these out of the way because this fire brick is going to get hot and I don't want to melt the metal. All right, so I'm going to turn my flame on and I'm going to start circling this. And that flux is going to get crusty and then it's going to start to burn out. The water is going to evaporate out and it's going to be left with this crust. Now, once this piece of copper gets to temperature, these pieces of solder are going to pool and it's going to happen really, really fast. You're going to see a flash of silver. And once they pool, you're going to want to take the heat off, okay? And you're going to be left with these little bumps of solder. See them jumping? Okay, and my flux is crusty. Oh, that balled up. Oh, that one flowed, and that one flowed. All right, so that happened pretty fast. And you'll see those silver streaks right there. All right, I'm gonna let that cool down just a bit. Be careful not to grab that with your hands, because ouchies. All right, now I'm gonna flux this back. I'm gonna add a little bit of flux on here. It's gonna take out some of the hairs of my brush, but that smells interesting. Okay, and I'm gonna put that on top, and I'm gonna position it where I want this top piece to go. So essentially what I have right now is a solder sandwich, or sandwich if you're fancy. Now if I look at this from the side, I'm going to see that it's resting up top. Well, obviously it is, but it's like kind of like a little bumpy. It's not flush anymore. That's because I have those little bumps of already flowed solder. Now when I put my heat on this brass again, that solder is going to reflow, and then it's going to settle in and fuse into this back plate, or that brass back plate. All right. Now I am going to circle this brass plate, because again, I want that to get hot before the top piece. You can kind of see this levitating a little bit. Now it's kind of settling. Okay, so my video stopped, but I caught it in time, and both pieces, the brass and the copper, got really, really red. This settled down. And what I'm going to do is pick this up, quench it, and then put it in the pickle, just so that it can start to clean off some of that fire scale. So I got a little thing of pickle over to my right, and you can see that this worked. So this piece of copper is now attached to this piece of brass. Now I could cut this into like a pendant shape. I could later on, adhere this or solder this onto a ring shank if I wanted to. To get rid of that fire scale, I would put it in the pickle, and I would have to sand it and polish it to get back the copperiness and the brassiness. All right, so I'm going to put this back in the pickle, let it sit overnight, and then I can move on from there.